According to Encyclopedia Britannica, the popular phenomenon of organized recreational camping on a large scale did not develop until after World War II, when increased leisure time and the advent of camping with motorized vehicles caused a tremendous growth in the activity. The point of this video is to respectfully contest Britannica's beliefs about the origins of organized recreational camping in North America. While it's true, most pre-20th century Americans would have considered preposterous the notion of leaving the comforts of home and, just for the hell of it, living outdoors alongside a large group of other people doing the same thing. But in the 1860s, one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history would change the way a large part of the population thought about organized camping, and, in turn, spawn a movement. The circumstances of the Civil War forced many American soldiers, North and South, to live outdoors for long periods of time, without any of the comforts of home. They slept in tents and were generally always exposed to the elements. They cooked what little food they could acquire on campfires, and most lived very primitively. These organized encampments were far from recreational, and many soldiers considered the circumstances in which they lived to be a major component of the suffering they endured during the war. Nevertheless, within a year of the war's end, veterans began scheduling large group campouts where they would reunite with their fellow veterans and, quite literally, recreate the circumstances of camp life during the war. The Veteran Brotherhood and the Grand Army of the Republic veterans organizations both formed in 1866, and that year they began celebrating the anniversaries of battles with organized campouts. Both organizations also held the first of many annual encampments in 1866. Within a few years, groups of Confederate veterans and veterans of the Mexican-American War began to hold regular encampments of a similar nature as well. By the mid-1870s, regular annual campouts for veterans became fairly common in the United States, and they shared many common features. All in all, it seems veterans wanted to recreate the sense of brotherhood that emerged between soldiers during the Civil War. This meant reenacting the experiences of the war, even its deprivations. Sometimes veterans would borrow tents from local army outfits, but more often than not, they would supply their own camping equipment. When they arrived, former officers would perform a muster, or roll call. A parade usually followed where the old soldiers would march to martial music in full battle dress. Often an old general would review the soldiers after the parade. Then the veterans would sing songs together, listen to speeches, and often assign committees to plan the next annual campout. After the official business was over, they would return to their campsites. Some encampments only lasted a day or two. Others lasted several weeks. Some were attended by a few dozen veterans of a single company or regiment, and several thousands of veterans attended others. They clearly wanted to share the experience of camp life with their wives and families, and as a general rule, veterans were invited to bring their families to events. These campouts were recreational in the most literal sense, and they often featured highly orchestrated and spectator-driven mock battles. The first mock battle in the post-war era was organized by Union veterans at Massillon, Ohio, within 2 weeks of Lee's surrender. But one of the first large-scale, theatrical Civil War battle reenactments was held in an encampment of Confederate and Union veterans in August of 1879. According to one newspaper, 40,000 spectators were in attendance when several thousand war veterans camped at Aurora, Illinois, held a, quote, sham battle. Just for context, that is more than twice the total capacity of Madison Square Gardens in New York City. No doubt there was a solemn component to these campouts. Remembering lost brothers, remembering the hardships they endured, and remembering the cost of preserving the Union was certainly central to the reasons veterans chose to participate in these events. But the tone of contemporary newspapers suggests there was an element of adventure, of pride, of camaraderie, even of fun, that inspired Civil War veterans to relive their experiences during the war by submerging themselves and their families in the primitive circumstances of camp life. The campouts were meaningful, and the veterans and their families enjoyed the meaning they derived from organized recreational camping. So, just to rehash my initial point, the popular phenomenon of organized recreational camping emerged much earlier than many generally reliable sources suggest. The Civil War created a generation of men who wanted to remember their service and the service of their fellow soldiers by reliving a component of their wartime experience and sharing it with their families through the act of camping. In the process, they created a movement that spread across the country, and they didn't need automobiles to do it.